Moving along, though, I would like to introduce quickly Dr. James Boylan, who has worked at Georgia EPD since 2002 and is the current manager of the planning and support program in the air protection branch. And Dr. Boylan is going to be presenting to us today on air quality and smoke impacts in 2021.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Jim Boylan, and I am with the air branch of EPD, and we'll be talking about air quality and smoke in 2021. Georgia EPD understands the importance of prescribed burns, but at the same time, we need to make sure we meet EPA air quality standards and people are breathing clean air. So my first slide shows the ozone design values, and this shows the highest value in each MSA across the state. And the good news is that all areas outside Atlanta are well below the standard. And as of last year, Atlanta has finally met the ozone standard of 70 parts per billion. And that's good news because once we get redesignated back to attainment, it can open the door for the possibility of relaxing some of the prescribed burning restrictions in the Atlanta area. So next, I'm going to talk about PM 2.5, which is one of the main pollutants that comes off of prescribed burns. So this is a location of all of the PM 2.5 monitors in the state of Georgia. As you can see, they're spread out throughout the state. And I will talk about exceedances of the standard, the National Ambient Air Quality Standard, or the NAAQS. An exceedance of the NAAQS occurs when the 24-hour measurement is greater than 35 micrograms per cubic meter. A violation of the NAAQS is when it basically involves 3-year average. If the annual average over 3 years is greater than 12 micrograms, that's a violation. Or if the 98th percentile of 24-hour values average over 3 years is greater than 35. So the point is, you can actually have multiple exceedances of the NAAQS and still not be violating the NAAQS. And that is the case that we see here in Georgia. So this shows the annual PM 2.5 design values in each of the MSA, taking the highest monitor in each MSA. The current annual standard is 12 micrograms per cubic meter. And as you can see, all areas are well below the standard. So that's good news. We see here that the highest monitor or the highest measurements are in Augusta. However, EPA is considering lowering the PM 2.5 NAAQS. And if they were to lower the NAAQS down to 10 micrograms per cubic meter, the Augusta monitor would actually be above that new standard, and many of the other monitors would be barely below. There's also the daily PM 2.5 standard. These are the design values, the 3-year design values. Here we see the last couple of years, the highest values have been in Columbus and Albany, and those high values can be directly tied to prescribed burns. But again, we are well below the current standard of 35 micrograms per cubic meter. But if the standard was to be lowered to 25 micrograms per cubic meter, then we would barely be below. So speaking of updates to the NAAQS, there is some work currently going on. I am part of the EPA KSAC group that is reviewing the standards. We're meeting in November and December, and we will have a final report in March. And based on that report, EPA will do proposed rulemaking in summer of 2022 and final rulemaking in spring of 2023. At that point, the states have to submit designation recommendations in 2024, and then final designations of attainment or non-attainment would be 2025. So even if the NAAQS were to be lowered, the states would not need to comply with the lower value for several years. Next, I'll talk specifically about 2021 and the NAAQS exceedances. So as I mentioned, we have a number of NAAQS exceedances, although we are still well below the EPA standard. And we can see all of the exceedance listed here by location and date and by cause. So we have many exceedances in February, March, and April that we can tie directly to prescribed fires. We have a couple of exceedances July 4th and 5th due to holiday fireworks, and one in July downtown Atlanta due to diesel truck emissions. So I'm going to talk about each of these exceedances very briefly. This is also kind of putting it together, exceedances by area. For a monitor that measures 365 days per year, I mentioned the 98th percentile is what's used for the design value, which would be the 8th highest value. So the good news is that these monitors, the 7 highest values, we actually get to throw away and only keep the 8th highest value. So although we have had a number of exceedances at these monitoring locations, as long as we don't have many more this year, we should still be in good shape. So for each of these exceedances, we do a detailed analysis at Georgia EPD. And I'm going to talk about the old method that we used to do and has been presented in the past. So the old method includes a series of plots. This shows PM 2.5 concentrations at different monitors. It also shows the GFC reported acre burns from the GFC permitting database. And those are the red triangles, and the bigger the red triangle, the more acres. We also look at NOAA HMS smoke plumes, which includes satellite estimates of fire emissions, as well as estimated smoke plumes. And we also look at high split back trajectories, which looks at where the air parcels were coming from at the highest measured value hour at the monitor. We can backtrack and backtrack where those parcels of air came from. And then finally, we look at time series plots. And this allows us to see how the concentrations change over time. In fact, we had a PM 2.5 exceedance that occurred both on February 27th and 28th. And based on the time series plot, we can see that the exceedance on both those days was caused by fires on February 27th. So you can see the spike. Basically, the smoke plume was transported to the monitor, caused an exceedance on the 27th, and then it lingered overnight and caused an exceedance on the 28th. So a fire on the 27th caused 2 exceedance days. So this is the old way of doing it. What we've done now is taken all those plots I just showed you and put them into a single plot, which allows us to look at everything together. We have the PM concentrations, we have the GFC fire permits, we have the satellite fires, we have the high split trajectories and the smoke plumes, and the time series plot down in the quarter, which allows us to look at everything at one time. So this is the example that I just showed for February 27th and 28th, where we actually had the exceedances in Augusta. So I'm not going to go through these in details, but I'm just going to show them quickly. So this one shows an exceedance at Warner Robin, and you can see the large fires just to the north of Warner Robins that were likely responsible for this exceedance. March 8th. Again, we had exceedances at Macon and Columbus. March 9th, exceedances at Columbus and Athens, Georgia. And you can follow the back trajectories over the fires. You see the large number of fires. March 10th, exceedance at Augusta. March 11th, an exceedance at Rome. March 12th, an exceedance at Albany. And this is actually a blow up of that. And there's something added in this. In this case, we actually included fires from the day before the exceedance, as well as fires from the day of the exceedance. And the day before are in orange and the day of are in red. So we can actually look at, because like I said, many times these exceedances are not caused by fires on the day of the exceedance, it's caused by fires on the day before the exceedance that are transported to the monitor. March 13th, exceedance at Albany, Sandersville, and Warner Robin. So we had 3 monitors go over the standard. Again, here's a blow up where we can kind of zoom in and look more specifically at the back trajectories and the fires that may have contributed to the exceedance. March 14th, exceedance at Warner Robins. We can actually see one over near Columbus, but that's actually in Alabama. That's not a Georgia monitor, that's an Alabama monitor. And then April 6th, this is an exceedance at Albany. And again, we zoom in and we can actually see the fires there that were likely responsible for contributing to that exceedance. April 7th, again, zooming in on April 7th, and April 8th. So those are all the burns that we basically were able to linked to prescribed fires. Next, just for the last part of my talk, I'm just going to talk about the Georgia EPD legal burn types, just because something has changed recently and I wanted to bring it to everyone's attention. So in the Georgia EPD rules, there are 13 types of burn types that are allowed. And those are listed here, 1 through 13. And, you know, there's a lot of talk about the summer burn ban, which goes from May 1st to September 30th. And this map basically shows the restrictions by county. And I know Ken and his group, when they're issuing the permits, you know, use this information and build it into their permitting system, whether they're actually allowed to permit certain type of burns in certain counties during certain times of the year. So here we have the allowed burns. You know, there's the 19 counties around the Atlanta area that does not allow prescribed burns during the summer burn ban. Then we have other restrictions in the remaining counties. And then there's many of the counties that have no restrictions. Basically, all 13 types are allowed to occur. In addition to the summer burn ban, we actually have restrictions that are not during the summer, from October 1st through April 30th. And these restrictions apply to all the counties that are included in the previous summer burn ban, but only to the county. It only applies to the counties where the population of the county is greater than 65,000 people based on the latest census data. And the reason I bring this one up is because as you can see, the different types of burns that are allowed and not allowed. So the burns that are not allowed during these months would be burns 8, 9, and 11, which if we go back here, we can see burns 8, 9, and 11. But the thing to point out are 3 counties based on the latest 2020 census went from below 65,000 to above. And those counties are listed here. Those are Catoosa, Jackson, and Spalding. So those 3 counties now have additional restrictions. So the EPD rule did not change, but the rule is based on the latest census, and the latest census data, since it came out, basically pulled those 3 counties into additional restrictions. And I just want to make everyone aware. And I have my contact information here. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.